I wasn't there to fix anything that day. No broken pipes, no unpaid bills, no late medications. I was just helping Dad scan a few forms for his insurance, something I'd done 100 times before. The old all-in-one printer was still stubborn, just like him. He never quite figured it out, even after a decade of my explaining. "You're good with tech," he always said, even though I've been in project management since I was 24, not IT. He left the documents in a neat stack on the dining table. Medical forms, utility bills, a few notes from their Medicare provider. Then I saw it, cream-colored, thick, labeled in Mom's handwriting. Estate plan, final copy. I paused. I wasn't supposed to open it, I knew that. But just last week, I'd paid their $2,178 property tax bill without a single word. Today, I was going to pick up their blood pressure meds after work, just like always. So yes, I opened it. The language was sterile, legal, and absolute. The house, fully paid off. Retirement accounts. A modest but stable life insurance policy. All of it, everything, was designated to one name, Brandon Harper. My younger brother, 29 years old, unemployed, still living at home. The same Brandon who dropped out of college twice and tried music for 3 years, which meant posting unwatchable clips on YouTube from the garage. His videos never broke 300 views, but Mom called him creative and Dad always said, he just hasn't found his path yet. Meanwhile, my name, Natalie Harper, appeared once. One sentence. We love both of our children equally and trust them to care for one another. That was it. No mention of the money I'd wired for their furnace last winter. No line about the late-night calls to help them navigate their insurance. Not even a thank you. Just nothing. A polite erasure. I stood there in the kitchen, scanner humming beside me, one hand resting on the countertop. My fingers didn't shake, but my breath turned shallow, sharp like the moment before a migraine. The silence in that room felt thick, like it knew, like the walls had been waiting for me to find out. The folder was still open in front of me when Dad walked back in, holding a mug of black coffee. You getting through that stack, Nat? I held the folder up, not too high, just enough for him to see. Is this how it is? I asked, voice quiet, not angry. Everything goes to Brandon. He froze mid-step. The coffee didn't spill, but it stopped moving. He sighed, a deep, slow sigh I recognized. Not confusion, not surprise, guilt. He already knew what I'd found. It's not what you think, he said. I didn't answer, because it was exactly what I thought. I waited, and he did what Harper men do. He avoided the hard part. We figured you'd understand. You're doing well, Natalie. You've always done well. That line again. I'd heard it all my life. It was their favorite excuse when they didn't want to explain something. You've always done well. Translation, you don't get to ask for more. You don't get to need. You're the strong one, so you should be fine with less or nothing. I closed the folder, left it right there on the table. Then I walked out to the porch for air. The swing creaked when I sat down, slightly uneven. I had replaced that swing 2 summers ago. Same week the deck railing cracked, and Brandon said he was between jobs again. I paid the contractor up front, told them not to mention my name to Mom, because back then I thought protecting their dignity was more important than my bank account. I sat still and watched the wind stir the tall oak tree across the lawn. Brandon once carved his initials into that tree with a girl named Hallie. She was from his second high school. I wonder if he even remembers her. Or the fact that I paid $800 to trim that tree after the last storm nearly split it down the middle. I wonder if they ever noticed what I gave up. Not just the money, the job offers, the city I loved, the sense of ease. I wonder if they saw me, or only the things I handled. Inside, the scanner beeped. Job complete. The door creaked, and I already knew who it would be. Mom stepped out onto the porch a few minutes later. Same pale blue cardigan she always wore when something heavy needed saying. The one from that Christmas, I gave her a massage gift card and Brandon handed her a burned CD labeled, "Mom, mix volume 2." She said she loved both gifts equally. Of course she did. She didn't sit at first, just stood near me, twisting the edge of her sleeve the way she always did when trying to look gentle while delivering disappointment. "Natalie," she said, "not too soft, not too sharp." I didn't look up. She sat beside me anyway. "We didn't mean for you to find out like that," she offered. I nodded once. Silence stretched between us like fog. "It's not that we don't love you," she added. I didn't respond. Because what do you call love that forgets your name when it's inconvenient? Her hand landed lightly over mine. It was warm, trembled slightly. "Brandon's had a harder time," she said. "You're steady, Nat. You always have been. Steady, strong, reliable." Words that start out sounding like praise, until you realize they're the scaffolding people use to build their excuses on your back. I pulled my hand away. "You could have told me," I said quietly. "You could have asked." She didn't answer right away. Her gaze drifted toward the yard, toward the oak tree. "We had to co-sign," she said after a pause. "Brandon needed the help." Her voice was softer, almost embarrassed. It was 35. The number hit like a cold splash. $35,000. Real debt, real signatures, real obligations, not just words on a will. They weren't choosing Brandon out of generosity. They were covering themselves. I stood up slowly. The wind picked up just enough to rattle the wind chime overhead. Then it fell silent again. "You didn't pick him because he needed it," I said, not accusing, just stating the truth. "You picked him because you already owed it to him." She looked stunned for a second, but only because I'd said out loud what she'd been avoiding. I didn't wait for a reply. I stepped back inside, picked up my bag, and left. That night, I canceled the auto deposit I had set up for their utility bills. I deleted the weekly calendar reminder for prescription refills, paused the grocery delivery account that restocked them every Thursday at 4 p.m. Nothing dramatic, no announcement, no argument, just absence, a quiet undoing. I didn't even block their numbers. I just stopped. Maybe they'd notice. Maybe they wouldn't. But either way, for the first time in my adult life, I decided to stop carrying people who assumed I'd never set them down. Because this wasn't the first time I'd filled in the cracks. For years ago, when Dad fell behind on the mortgage, I wired $11,000 from my savings before he could even ask. I didn't want them to feel ashamed. I wanted them to feel safe, secure, loved. I paid their car insurance when it lapsed. I called the credit card company when the late fees piled up. I covered groceries when their SNAP renewal was delayed, because I couldn't stand the idea of them rationing breakfast. When the furnace died last winter, I didn't wait for a request. I just called the contractor and paid in full. They didn't even know it had been me until weeks later when Mom found the invoice in the recycling bin. And yet, somehow, all of that was invisible in the final math. The things I did didn't count because I never made them cost anything. Brandon? He carved his name into trees and called himself a visionary. He slept in while I took double shifts. He needed time to find himself. I needed to be useful. One of us got rewarded for existing. The other got forgotten for functioning too well. I remember once, years ago, during a bad flu season, Mom called crying because they couldn't afford Tamiflu. I drove across town after work, but everything they needed made them soup, clean the kitchen, wash the sheets, and then went home alone, feverish myself. 2 days later, Brandon posted a photo of him taking care of his parents while handing them orange juice. The caption got 54 likes. Mom commented, "So grateful for our sweet boy." I wasn't mentioned, but I told myself it didn't matter. I didn't do it for the credit. I did it because I loved them, because that's what family is, right? Except love that only flows one way isn't love. It's obligation in disguise. I didn't need them to grovel. I didn't even need recognition. I just needed to not be erased from the record, like I never showed up in the first place. The record said, "We trust our children to take care of each other But they didn't trust me to receive, only to give. And that was the part one couldn't keep living with. The first week passed in silence. I thought maybe they'd notice the groceries didn't arrive on Thursday. Maybe they'd wonder why the low-sodium crackers were missing or why their checking account wasn't topped off before the water bill cleared. But no texts, no calls, just stillness. Like they assumed I was busy, or tired, or maybe even unwell, but definitely not gone. Week 2 brought the first ping, Dad's text. Water bill came in higher this month. Can you check the balance? I stared at the screen, let it sit unread. Then I turned my phone face down. Hours later, another message. Mom this time. We're out of the crackers you always bring. Brandon forgot. She didn't say hello, didn't ask how I was. Just an inventory update, like I was still their delivery system. I let it go. The third week, the tone shifted. Mortgage is due, Mom wrote. Can you send what you usually do? No greeting, just a number, just the expectation that I'd fill the gap. I typed back slowly, asked Brandon. It's his house now. I hit send, didn't wait. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. Mom. I let it ring. Then came another message. Please don't be like this. We need to talk. But there was nothing left to talk about. They'd made their decision. I was just finally acting like it mattered. That evening, Brandon chimed in. Don't make this a big deal, Nat. Just help them like always. Like always. Like reflex. Like I was just reliable background noise. I replied, You're the one they chose, Brandon. So be the choice. No response. Just silence. The next morning, I woke up to a transfer request from Mom. $3,200. Exact amount of the overdue mortgage and penalties. No message. No note. Just the number. I declined it. 1 minute later, the phone rang again. Then again. Then again. And finally a message from Dad. You'd let your parents go homeless? I almost laughed. They weren't homeless. They were just uncomfortable. For the first time, they were living without my cushion. For the first time, they felt the raw wind I'd been shielding them from for over a decade. I turned off my phone, set it face down on the counter. Breathe. They didn't lose me when they wrote me out of the will. They lost me when they assumed I'd keep showing up, no matter how invisible I became. Days passed. The silence grew. And in that quiet, I found something I hadn't realized I'd lost: space. I stopped checking my phone before bed. I stopped shopping for 2 extra people every time I went to the store. I stopped rehearsing explanations in my head about why I was tired, why I was stretched thin, why I couldn't afford a vacation this year. Instead, I sat in my apartment at the end of the day and ate food I liked. I watched documentaries I never had time for. I slept, like really slept. And the longer the silence stretched, the more I realized how loud they'd always been. The requests, the guilt, the coded disappointment, all wrapped in the soft cloth of obligation. But silence never lasts in my family, not when there's blame to pass around. The first hint was a voicemail from Aunt Jean. She never called me, always said she didn't get in the middle of family things. But this time her voice was tight. I'm not taking sides, honey, but your mom's worried sick. Maybe just talk to them. That's when I knew they'd started pulling others in. I opened Facebook. It didn't take long. A photo of the porch. Caption, we gave everything to our children, but sometimes giving isn't enough. Dozens of likes. A few concerned comments. Then Brandon's reply. Some people think family is about money. They forget it's about showing up. I closed the app. They weren't just disappointed. They were rewriting the story, recasting me as ungrateful, cold, cruel, turning me from caretaker to villain, all because I'd stopped feeding the machine. I still said nothing, but silence has a weight of its own. Then I saw it, a like, a single red heart under Dad's post. From Kelly, my cousin, the one who once told me I was the glue in this family. No comment, just the emoji. But it hit like a slap. She knew what I'd done for them. She knew. And still, she joined the side with the louder story. I closed my laptop, sat in the dark, let my hand rest on the table unmoving. For the first time in weeks, something cracked. Not loudly, not visibly, but inside, something shifted. They weren't just disappointed in me. They were erasing me. And maybe they were hoping I'd stay erased. They came on a Thursday. I should have expected it. The messages weren't working. The guilt had lost its shine. The transfer requests had been ignored. So of course they escalated. The front desk called at 10:42 a.m. Ms. Harper, your parents are here, and a man who says he's your brother. I stood in the hallway outside my office, staring at the speckled floor tiles as the receptionist kept talking. They said it's urgent. Should I send them up? I took a breath. Slow, deliberate. Please let them know I'm unavailable and that they're not expected. A pause. They said they'll wait. Of course they would. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed. We're downstairs. Open the door. Then another. We're not leaving until we talk to you. I didn't rush. I finished my meeting, replied to 2 emails, then gathered my coat and headed down. They were waiting just outside the building, huddled awkwardly by the glass entry. Dad stood stiff, like he was holding in a lecture. Mom clutched her purse with both hands, eyes darting between the street and the doorway. Brandon looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. They all turned when I stepped through the door. I didn't speak. I didn't move closer. I just crossed my arms and waited. Danielle, Mom said, except this time it was Natalie. My name. My real name. Her voice already on edge. We need to talk. I looked past her toward the quiet street. A delivery van rumbled by in the distance. I didn't answer. Dad cleared his throat. You'd really let us lose the house over this? I tilted my head. You really thought I wouldn't? His mouth opened, but I raised a hand, cutting him off. You left me out. You handed everything to Brandon. You made your decision, and now you're here, asking for the same help I gave for years, without being asked. I let the silence settle. Mom stepped forward slightly. We thought you'd understand. You've always been strong. I nodded once. You used that as an excuse to forget me. Brandon muttered something. I didn't catch it all. Something about not asking for any of this. I looked at him. But you took it, I said. Didn't you? He looked away. Dad shifted, arms crossing now. Defensive. We fed you. Raised you. You owe us something. I almost laughed. I paid that debt every month, every year. And you erased me anyway. Mom's lip trembled. We didn't mean to hurt you. I stepped forward, calm. Then why did you wait until I was gone to realize I was the one holding everything up? No one answered. Brandon reached for the handle of the building door. I stopped him. Don't. He blinked. What? You're not coming up. You're not coming in. I'm not your answer this time. The 3 of them stood there, together, a perfect picture of expectation. And me? I was done explaining myself to people who only looked when something broke. They didn't lose me when they changed the will. They lost me the moment they believed I'd never walk away. I turned and walked back into the building without another word. They stood there. I felt their eyes on my back, but I didn't turn around. Back upstairs, I sat at my desk. My heart didn't race. My breath didn't stutter. There was no panic, no adrenaline. Just clarity. They weren't entitled to me. They never were. That evening, the messages returned in waves. Mom first, soft pleading. We didn't know you were hurting this much. Please, Nat, we just want to fix it. Then Dad, cold, clipped. You're blowing this out of proportion. You're being cruel. Brandon said nothing for a day, then finally sent one line. You think this makes you better? Walking away. I didn't answer, because it didn't make me better. It made me free. 3 days later, I went for a walk. No destination. Just air. Just movement. The streets were quiet, autumn leaves sticking to the sidewalk. My path curved toward the neighborhood where I grew up. I didn't mean to go there. I just did. The old street looked the same. Cracked concrete, faded shutters. But the house had changed. A for sale sign leaned crooked in the front lawn. The grass was dry, yellowing. The wind chime I once replaced was gone. So was the porch swing I had fixed. The blinds were drawn. I stood on the sidewalk and looked at it. That house never kept me. I kept it. And now it was someone else's problem. I didn't move closer. I didn't need to see inside. I already knew what had collapsed. I reached into my pocket. My phone buzzed once then again. I didn't check it. I already knew the name that would be on the screen. I let it buzz, then stop, then buzz again. I pulled it out. Missed call. Mom. Missed call. Dad. Voicemail. I muted the phone. Slipped it back into my coat. No message needed. I already knew what it would say. I walked home in the cold, slow air of a late October afternoon. Not angry. Not vindicated. Just still. My hands stayed in my pockets. My spine didn't ache. My shoulders didn't curl forward like they used to. That was the first thing I noticed when I stopped carrying the weight. My body changed. I had space inside of me again. Back at the apartment, I poured a glass of water. Sat by the window. The light was gold and fading. I thought about all the versions of me that had tried to earn love. The college grad who stayed local so mom wouldn't feel lonely. The 20-something who canceled vacations to cover bills. The woman who paid medical expenses in silence. Each one of them had been erased from the story. And now the story didn't need me to make sense anymore, because they were writing a new one without me. A few days later, another wave hit social media. A photo of my parents smiling on the front steps of a neighbor's house. Caption: "We raised them with love. We did our best, but sometimes love isn't enough." No names, no specifics, but everyone who knew us knew. I recognized the play. A subtle tug on sympathy, a quiet cry for backup. The comments came quickly. "You too are such great parents. You deserve better." Then came Dad's post. Longer, sharper, less subtle. "We gave everything to our children. Time, money, love. We thought we raised them right. But in the end, you can't control who turns their back on you." He tagged me. Not a call, not a text, just a public post for strangers and cousins and coworkers to see. The narrative was set, and I was the villain. I didn't respond. I watched the likes climb. Names I hadn't seen in years. A neighbor, an old teacher, a distant uncle. Most didn't comment. They just liked. But then there was Mason. Of course. He shared Dad's post with his own caption. "Some people only care when they're getting something. I'd give anything to protect Mom and Dad. I guess not everyone sees family that way." I read it once. Then again. This man, who hadn't paid rent in a decade, who drained every dollar they had, who let the mortgage slip into risk, was now draped in martyrdom. A cardboard hero in a story that made no sense, except it wasn't for me. It was for the crowd. The comments were worse. "You're such a good son." "Your sister should be ashamed." They gave her everything, and she still walked away. They didn't want truth. They wanted someone to blame. And for once, I let them. Because when someone shows up with a version of you that's easier to hate, they're not worth correcting. But the final fracture didn't come from them. It came from Kelly. She didn't comment, just left a heart emoji. That broke something in me I hadn't known was still intact. She was the one who used to sneak me lemon bars during family reunions when no one noticed I hadn't eaten. The one who once whispered, "You're the glue in this family." But glue gets used. It gets dried up and thrown away when it stops holding everyone else together. That night I didn't cry. I just stopped checking, stopped logging in, stopped explaining. They could keep their version. I had mine, and mine came with silence. The next week, an envelope arrived. No return address. I opened it. Foreclosure notice. Copy only. Not addressed to me. But the house number was unmistakable. 115 Valley View Drive. I flipped the paper over, stared at the blank side, then scribbled one line in pen. Maybe you should have left it to someone who could manage it. I didn't send it. I didn't need to. They were already learning. And I was already somewhere else. The final time I passed the house, the porch was empty. The swing gone. The shutters cracked. A pile of damp newspapers lay against the front door. There was no rage in me, no grief left to ring out, just distance. I walked past it like it was a stranger's house, because it was. They'd made it clear I didn't belong there anymore. And finally, I believed them. If they once counted on your silence, but forgot your name, leave a heart. Some of us never raised our voice, but we never disappeared.